to the
pull
door.
up.
Yeah.
You know, if that person already has a gun in the situation, they just open the door and start shooting. You don't know what you're walking into.
Right, and I've had one sheriff's deputy say that he almost prefers to be called on for a holdup, an armed robbery, because he knows what to expect. He knows someone's going to have a gun. When you walk into a domestic violence.
Welcome to the Bill Moran Show on WVLP LP 103.1 FM and streaming live at WVLP.org or on your TuneIn app. We are broadcasting live from the historic 1 Center Street building in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana. The Bill Moran Show is underwritten by Recovery Works of Maryville, Indiana. And now, here is your host, Bill Moran.
Good day, this is Bill Moran, welcoming you to the Bill Moran Show. Today we have with us representatives of CASA. We have with us Sarah Fink. Welcome
Hello.
to the show, Sarah.
Thanks very much.
Sissy Wardell, welcome to the show. And then finally we have Emily Hoke.
Hi.
Hello. And then, of course, my co-host, Megan Johnston. And
Hello, Bill.
hello. And then sitting back there is Kelly Rasala, my other co-host. Yeah, wave, Kelly. We won't be hearing Kelly's rants today because we have so many things to cover today. So, oh, yeah, I know. She's broken up by that. Her agent's already contacted me and expressed a concern, but we've got to do what we've got to do. So let's go right into the introductions. We'll start with you, Sarah. If you'll tell us a bit about yourself and your role with CASA and what CASA stands for.
Sure. I'm the program director for CASA. And CASA stands for, it's actually an acronym, it stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. And the CASA program is a national nonprofit program that recruits and trains regular people just like you and me to represent the best interests of children who've been removed from their homes due to abuse or neglect. And they enter the court system as a result of that reason.
Great. And let's move around the table. And Sissy Wardell, if you'll tell us a bit about yourself and your role with CASA.
Hello, everyone. I'm actually the coordinator for the Porter County CASA program, and what I do is I recruit, and then I will interview prospective CASAs, and then I conduct the training sessions, and then I also supervise the newbies until they move along to somebody else within our program.
Awesome. And we'll be hearing more from all of you, I'm sure. And then finally, the third person that came to join us today is Emily Hoke. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Hi, so I'm Emily. I'm a case coordinator and supervisor at CASA. I recently started with the agency, so I started in October, so my job's still kind of getting figured out. But what I'll be doing is supervising our CASAs and also having my own cases that I monitor, as well as helping on the business side of things with statistics and helping with our marketing.
Emily's doing pretty much everything right now.
Yeah, so that always happens with the new
Yes,
person that comes in,
exactly.
right?
Right,
The newbie
right. 'Cause
always
she can
gets,
do everything.
Yeah.
She's
So
big
your
time.
desk, if I imagine, has like 12-inch high stacks of
Yep.
paperwork.
Post-it notes.
Yeah,
A
sticky
lot
notes.
of Post-it notes.
Yep.
Will you take care of this? Okay, yeah, sure.
Pretty
sure.
much.
Yeah, Emily will do it. She'll do anything. So
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So back to you, Sarah. Let's talk about CASA again, what it stands for, and give us a little bit more information, and we'll move along.
Sure. Well, so as I was saying, that kids, when they're removed from their homes, they enter into the court system, and it's at that point that the judges need to decide. Well, I should clarify and back up and let people know that that is only happening after the Department of Child Services has been involved, and they're the ones who make that determination if it's to the point where kids need to be removed, and then there's a court hearing, and at that first court hearing, the judge will decide whether or not the child is in need of services. And at that point, the CASA program is appointed. And basically, the judges need to decide what it would take for those children to be safely reunified with their parents. That's the ultimate goal always. But sometimes, we need to explore other options if it comes to that. And so the judge is really looking for another set of eyes to give input, to get to know the kids in depth, their stories, the people in their lives, the parents, school teachers, foster parents, so that they can make fact-based recommendations to the judge at the court hearings for what is in the child's best interest.
So basically, you step and represent these poor people who just can't speak for themselves and don't know anything about legal counsel or what this big room is with this person with a robe on is all about.
Well, right, and in our court system, the children are not in the court, so the judge appoints attorneys, public defenders for the parents. But she appoints CASA to speak for the children.
Yeah, great. So why don't you tell us a bit about how long CASA has been around?
Right. So it's a great story. There was a judge in Seattle in the 1970s, and I actually heard him talk last year, and he gave his story, and it was fascinating. He basically told about knowing that the system was overburdened, and he, as a judge, he felt he would go to sleep every night with just this great burden on himself he didn't feel he was able to make the best decisions for the kids because he didn't feel like he had enough information. And so it was his brainchild, and he thought, you know what, I'm gonna tell the people in my office to put the word out for citizens, to just come, anybody interested, come bring your bag lunch and show up, and I'm gonna see how many people can be interested in being trained to just get to know children and be their voice. And I think he was overwhelmed by the response, and from that grew a national program with a standard curriculum. We are a local member of that program here in Valparaiso. We're a program of the Family Youth Services Bureau since 1989. And it's a little bit confusing to people sometimes because we fall under their umbrella. So we're one of their many programs, but that's how we exist here in Porter County.
And you're just right on
Lincoln Way. Right.
Just a block from Fluid Coffee Bar.
Right down the street. Very handy.
Who is fueling this show today.
Nice. Great.
They're not underwriter, but they do keep us fueled so we don't fall
Love them.
asleep.
Great,
We
yes.
love them. Just a great.
I don't think a show goes by where Bill does not put in a plug for Fluid.
No,
Nice.
it's I love Chuck and Ellison, and
Great.
I think it's in return, but I'm not sure about that. But it's but once again, Fluid Coffee.
He's holding his cup up.
Kelly, do you want to hold your cup up?
Well,
Yeah.
it's not in a
Yeah, well, it's close. Yeah, it's got Fluid Coffee in there. So, yeah, they've been very supportive of the station. They're not an underwriter yet, but they've been very supportive of keeping the host fueled, so to speak.
Great. Yes, we are right down from them.
Great. So you know where to go if you have to take your
Exactly.
client for a coffee. So let's get more back into CASA and that whole representation of the children. And once they're, if you will talk about, the point that they're removed and when you get involved as their advocate and who calls you. And let's get it down to that point.
So we're notified by the court when a child has been removed from the home, and then we're notified of a detention hearing. And so representation from CASA will go to that detention hearing and have the opportunity to hear the allegations for the reason the child was removed. And they can range anywhere from, what we see a lot nowadays is things related to addiction, so parents who are addicted and not able to care for their kids because of that addiction. We see some domestic violence. We see, what am I missing? Probably about 40 other things.
Mental
Those are
health
mental
and
health
mental
issues, or yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mental health is playing such a large role
Exactly.
in today's society. I've
Yeah.
talked to counselors all the time who say now, before, and actually, one of the counselors I know provided counseling to some minors, and he said that the amount of time he normally would spend to them 10 years ago
Right.
has increased.
Yes.
There's so many issues related to the home, abuse or neglect, that they just had to spend more time with the counselor.
There is definitely a greater complexity to cases that we see nowadays. The people who have been with our program for a long period of time have stated that, it used to be it would be maybe something at the detention hearing. We would have to do more with, a dirty house, or you're unsure the safety. And now there's a whole range of allegations that could be made. And so the cases are more complex, and we do involve a lot of different service providers to provide services to them for rehabilitation.
Yeah. I wish you guys were around when I was a kid, because my parents constantly tried to lose me at the River Oaks Shopping Center. Every time they take me, I would just turn around and they wouldn't be there. And, I'd see them run towards their car. And but I don't know
turned
why.
out okay.
I was
You have your
such
radio
a
program
perfect
now.
child. I was such a perfect child, loving, never caused any damage in the
I'm
house.
sure.
No, didn't steal the chocolate chips before my mom could make chocolate chip cookies. I never did any of that. I don't understand.
Oh
what their
gosh, that
problem
happens at
is.
my house all the time.
So getting back to it again. So let's talk about specific cases, and we'll move on to the next question. Say that, and I know you get into after the court notifies you, but say, let's break it down. All of a sudden, there's a restraining order or protective order filed against a parent to protect the children. And, eventually that case gets to court, and you're notified by the court and come in. And so is there a psychological analysis done from the children to see the impact that what is happening had on them? Or are you ever brought forth as a witness to attest to the fact that these kids really are suffering some consequences?
That's a good question. No, we wouldn't be brought forth as like a professional witness, no. But we're there to get to know the child, and really each case is very different, case to case. The age of the child, how much they've seen, and then, believe it or not, once you get to know the children too, so children even children of the same age, from person to person, have different levels of resiliency. And that's kind of what's beautiful about the CASA program, is that we have the time to actually get to know the kids in an in-depth way, and we can kind of gauge those things to provide information to the magistrate about what would be helpful for that particular kid. And so we do work with, if we have gotten to know the child and their circumstances, and we think based on that and their age and what they saw, that sort of thing, then we would be able to make a recommendation. I think, yes, this child would benefit from therapy, would benefit from, or maybe they didn't. It just depends on the levels. Maybe we would think that ultimately, given their age and that sort of thing, that could backfire. And so we do weigh in and we give opinions, and they're based on having talked with a whole range of people, and having worked in the past with providers and service providers. So did you want to add anything to that, Emily, or no? Yeah. Okay.
So let's move on here. What are the requirements for being a CASA, an advocate?
Answer that, Sissy?
Yes, I will answer that. Okay, volunteers must be at least 21 years of age. They must be mature, and they
I'm
must... I don't know how I became one either. But anyway, they definitely must possess communication skills.
Right.
We probably can't have a very shy CASA because in your role you have to interview children, you have to have a relationship with the parents and other professionals that may be involved.
So,
They go through an interview and background check as well.
right, and
Yeah.
that the background check is key. You can't allow these people to work as an advocate without a background check,
That's
can you?
correct.
All right,
No,
so-
that's true.
It would be the same because you're dealing with children, so it's the same almost as if you were, you know, a professional doing counseling or a teacher or anybody else out there that's dealing with children.
Yeah, I know, working for the schools for 21 years, it was very concerning. Before you can actually come into the building now, even to volunteer, to read to children, you have to go through a background check, even to volunteer. And before, the good old days where the grandparents used to come in and read to the kids, those days are gone. And
Right.
so, and I'm sure if you're coming forth and want to act as an advocate. So, what is the, are these strictly voluntary positions, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have currently, so CASA volunteers make up our program. If I could back up, one more thing I just
Go
wanted to
right
say about
ahead.
the requirements and the prerequisites. You don't have to have any special skill or particular background. And I want to emphasize that because really all of our volunteers do so many different things. We have people from the steel mills, we have nurses, we have retired teachers, we have stay-at-home moms, we have just about anything you can think of, we have a volunteer representation, So I wanted to let people know that you don't really have to have a special skill. We train you for what you need to know. Now remind me, Bill, what your question was before I sidetracked onto that.
Real quick, I want to throw in, we
Yeah.
have students also.
Oh, yes.
A lot of college students are attracted, especially social work majors.
And
And law
some kids
students.
in criminal justice.
I think
that
you
sort of
covered
thing.
it. It was just basically who will you let be a CASA, and so so let's talk about that position because they're exposed to some pretty difficult situations. Anytime where you're dealing with a child that is in a vicarious situation, that's heart-wrenching because they can't defend themselves. They need someone to step forth and do what you all do. So talk about that and your
Right.
experiences as CASAs and the emotional effect it has on you. And I'm sure at some point, as everyone does periodically, and they shouldn't feel bad about it, you have to get a checkup. You have to go see counseling yourself to get over that. Because I've talked to people in human health services all the time that have to have a checkup every once in a while.
Yes,
So
yes.
talk about that, what it's like and what your day-to-day is.
Well, I think, so two different things. Staff, we do have 5 members full-time on staff. And so we tend to eat lunch together, and that's kind of our way of processing what we deal with. We have a good relationship with one another, and we're able to kind of let down, and that's therapeutic for us. It's cathartic to be able to talk about things and just be together and laugh. Because you're right, it is emotionally straining, a lot of stuff that we see. I hear a lot of times a potential volunteer will be afraid of that, and they do articulate, "Gosh, I just don't think I could do that. It would be too hard, and it's emotional." And what we tell them, and what I have said, is that although it's true you will naturally be emotionally invested, what the program seeks to do, and what we do a good job of, we train people to harness that emotion into real advocacy for kids that actually makes a difference. And I think that our CASA volunteers, who are, we have 60 of them, about 60 right now, I think that they would say that's true. And the more information you get, the more you're trained in how to deal with certain situations, and also the more effect that you see that you're having, it's empowering. So, and people find that they can do it. People surprise themselves, and it needs to be done. It's a job that really needs to be done, and people surprise themselves.
Sissy, this is probably one for you since you pretty much coordinate all these people. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So do you have like a list of people that you call on to go on a particular case? Do you have to analyze, okay, it's good for Joe to go on this one, it's
yes.
good for Joe, and how difficult is that to do?
Well, I basically am kind of in charge of that since I interview them and then I supervise all of them to begin with. And what we will do is for example, we will look at where the children may be placed. So an example would be, let's say if we have a CASA that lives near Michigan City. If the children are placed there, we may, talk to them about being in the CASA for that child, because what if it's much easier for them than someone that
Just
lives in Crown
demographically,
Point.
it's easier. We take
And
that into consideration.
Exactly. And one thing I want to stress also is that what we do is we look at the cases that we need CASAs for, and then we will talk about it as a group, and then we will call a prospective CASA and tell them about the situation in the case. So, for example, we have some CASAs, it's understandable they may not want a sexual abuse case, which we don't have very many of them, but we do have them, unfortunately. Or they may not want a physical abuse case. So you're not stuck with a certain case, is what I'm trying to
CASAs
say.
are able to give input about, even if they don't want to have an infant, if they would prefer to work with a teenager, they're able to express what their comfort level is, and we take that into consideration when making case assignments. Also, I wanted to say, I talked about how staff has helped emotionally, but everyone has a supervisor. So throughout the life of the case, you're constantly being supervised, and we are literally available for the CASAs 24/7. Anything that they need to process or any input that they need, they always have access to a supervisor to help them.
Right. And again, when this kind of plays to you all, but what about, did you have any CASAs that have been victims of abuse themselves, and what do they bring to the table? Do you feel that they are better able to engage and be more of an advocate? And playing devil's advocate, do you feel sometimes that may get in the way, that they may, because of their past experience, be so emotionally involved that they overstep their bounds? So if you could speak to that for just a bit.
I think that what comes to my mind is we've had a couple CASAs before that had suffered sexual abuse, and I think it can be kind of difficult for them to deal with a case, that involves sexual abuse. I have seen that quite often. As we have I can think of 2 CASAs that we have had in the past that had CASAs themselves.
Right.
And that's what made them decide to do this.
Right.
Was because they felt that the CASA really helped them when they needed the help.
Right. And I know from program to program, that's certainly the case. Other programs around the state and nationwide, you have people that have been in the system themselves, that have been helped, and that want to step forward because they know they were helped. And then, on the other side of it, we have also not just cases where CASAs may have been formally abused themselves, but we do have cases where occasionally a CASA will be able to say, you know what, I think maybe this isn't, after all. Sometimes, very infrequently, does that happen? Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say by that is that they have input. It's not like they're being forced to represent in any way anything that they're not comfortable with.
But if they get involved in the case and they say, oh, gosh, I really can't do this. This hits
Has that
home.
happened, Sissy?
It does happen once in a while.
Once in a while.
We try, and when I do the initial interview and at the beginning of the classes, we kind of try, I can honestly say they naturally weed themselves out, because it's some, intense subjects. And so a lot of times by the time just 1 or 2 classes finish, they realize that it's something they don't think that they're equipped to do.
The screening and interviewing process is important, and it's a process that both CASA program can see if it's a good fit, if the prospective volunteer, and then the volunteer themselves, needs to understand by talking with Sissy, is this a good fit for me? I would say it's not for everybody, but it's for more people than probably people think, if that makes sense.
I'm just sitting here thinking about your job, Sissy, and I'm just, you really have to coordinate all these people. And you said there's 60 of them, 60 CASAs about?
Well, I only supervise the new ones.
The new
newbies.
ones, okay.
So then
All right,
we
so
move on
that,
to
hence,
Sarah.
that is the
or
reason.
Someone else, yes.
That's the reason why y'all sit down and have some good discussions at lunch to help
Yes.
coordinate this. Because I imagine 60, then you have to keep track of the court cases that they're involved in.
Yes.
And what process of each one of the cases. That could
That's
be
right.
absolutely mind-boggling. And one of the things that we talk about constantly about the show, we seem to be gravitating towards social justices and groups like yours, and we've had domestic violence roundtable discussions here before. We've had Judge Harper, Sheriff Reynolds, Mary Beth Schultz, and one thing that I always love telling the story, because we did one on drug abuse. Sheriff Reynolds comes up to me, and you always listen to the sheriff. Number one, number two, you pretty much better do what he tells you, or things may not go well for you after that. So he comes up, he said, "Bill, we've got to do this for domestic violence." And well, first of all, he asked me, what is the number 2 problem next to drug abuse in the county? And, at the end, I said, I don't know, breaking and entering, I don't know, what is it? And he said, domestic violence. That is probably one of the most ingrained problems that law enforcement has to deal with, because it's extremely volatile, let alone the kids' involvement.
Right.
And so, I mean, the byproduct of domestic violence, if there are kids present, always involves the kids. And being that is the number 2 problem in the county, and you are engaging and acting as advocates, oh my gosh, I mean, how's the funding for you guys? How are you funded? And do you have to go to the county council to ask? So how is CASA supported?
I'm so glad you
and I
asked
know
that.
we're kind of going off track. I warned you about it, but
That's
it's something that I always do. I always go off track. I try not to put people on the spot, but if you can speak to that, how is it funded? Is it a non-for-profit? Do you have to seek your own funding? Is it supported by the county? Court fees? How is it?
As a part of Family Youth Services Bureau, which is a nonprofit, so we are a nonprofit. We get our funding both from the county and by state grants, matching grants. We also have a grant from VOCA, which is, Victims of Criminal something. I can't remember I should know what that stands for, but we have a grant from them as well. And then we are constantly seeking funds, and we'll probably need to do more of that because as our program grows, our funding has not increased from the county, even though we've had an increase of over 150% in terms of the amount of children that we've seen over the last 5 years. It's exponentially, the number of kids has just, exploded. But we're still working under the same budget, and so we are going to probably need to do more fundraising. Right now, we are also we have had some generous donations last year that enabled us to do some things. But that's that's something that's always in the back of our mind as something that we need to be considering and doing more of. I know that I sit on the domestic violence. I go to those meetings with Judge Harper and that sort of thing, and I know that they're constantly looking for just to educate people to run programs for domestic violence in the various counties. That's a real challenge. There's a great need for it. I'm trying to. I don't have a statistic in terms of how many of our cases have that element to them, but we certainly do see it, and we're certainly needing to make sure that kids who have seen violence. It's a truism that people who have witnessed kids who have witnessed violence, they continue that cycle. And so we are in the business of trying to break that cycle by making sure that we recommend the right things for them.
Right.
So.
And getting back to the funding again. So you do have private donations?
Last year we had some private donations, but we're completely at the mercy of other people who know about us, and we're trying. That's why we're here today. We're trying to get out there more, so that there's more public awareness about what we do and who we are, and
Because as I'm thinking about the problems that this county faces, domestic violence, drug abuse, which we've talked about, and Megan has a show specifically dedicated for resources, which Lord bless her heart, and then we were talking about the people who can't defend themselves, that can't because of their age and their maturity.
Right.
And it's those are the things that we really, if this is the number 1 and 2 problem in the county, we have to think along those lines and getting funding. And it's a shame that I'll speak to the Caring Place. It's a shame that this community has a shelter for women, being that this is the number 2 problem in Porter County, and not just women, families.
Right.
27 beds, kids are sleeping on the floor. They're sleeping in mattresses.
There's not enough room.
Yeah, there's not enough room, and yet we have to struggle to find funding for them and find funding for you, because I imagine as domestic violence increases, as Sheriff Reynolds has shared with me more than once, it seems like we should proportionately be funding these or finding funding for these organizations, because my gosh, especially yours, and we're dealing with someone that can't jump in a car, can't pick up a phone and say I need help, and we just have to keep making sure that these entities are funded. So do you have any fundraising avenues, or is that something you have not entertained yet?
That's something that we will and we have talked about. We were fortunate to win a free partnership with Valpo Life just this past, at the end of the
cool.
year, it was wonderful. It was their Good Life Awards evening where people were allowed to vote on a nonprofit. Actually, there are 3 winners, but we got the top prize. So that enables us to have some free exposure on Valpo Life on their website, and they've been great. They have tutored us and schooled us all about social media and provide content and that sort of thing. So we're excited about that. And then in terms of fundraising, I just started an advisory group. We've met twice, but that is something that we have talked about needing to do, and it's a huge thing. You almost need a full-time staff person to do that, and we're spread pretty thin, covering just the cases, and like you say, supervising that many cases. But it's something that we will. The advisory group, which is made up of CASAs themselves, who are great people, they're willing to jump on board and brainstorm and get behind things like that. So we're very fortunate. The people that we have volunteering with us are just amazing people. Yeah.
Let's get back to that. We do have to take a station break right now, so let us go ahead and get that started, and we'll come back and
Great.
pick up right where we left off.
Thank you.
You are listening to The Bill Moran Show on WVLP LP 103.1 FM and streaming live at WVLP.org or on your TuneIn app. We are broadcasting live from the historic 1 Center Street building in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana. The Bill Moran Show is underwritten by Recovery Works of Maryville, Indiana. If you or a loved one are struggling with a drug or alcohol problem, please call us at 866-535-4673. Now, back to your host, Bill Moran.
Welcome back. Okay, and we were talking about the most popular topic of any non-for-profit, funding. Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem, but it often is. So when I'm hearing from you that you really don't have fundraisers, your budgets are kept pretty much stagnant, even though you are experiencing an increase. Yeah, that's problematic. I mean, we're, again, dealing with people who can't help themselves.
Right.
So is there any thoughts about that? The Caring Place, a lot of people have stepped forward, but they're still falling short. That angers me,
Right.
quite frankly. As a member of the community, that angers me. And there's been a lot of effort, a lot of charity events. Sheriff Reynolds is extremely passionate about that, as he is with any problem. I can't say enough. Bless Sheriff Reynolds. He is probably the best law enforcement official in this state because
and the
he's
sheriff has a great video out that everybody should watch. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a very compelling video. We watched it together as staff at lunch the other day, and he does a great job of. I mean, it's real people in jail with their real stories from right around here about
Right.
addiction, and
Yep.
yeah, very eye opening.
Yeah, and he is never one to just sit back and watch a problem or hand excuse. He's a very big doer, and I hate to get involved politically, but I felt so reassured when he put his hat in the ring again, and because we've got a lot of problems in this county, and he's not one to let them go unanswered. He always thinks of the county first before himself, and so getting back to funding. So that is something. You really don't have any charity events to speak of.
Well, and we have, like I say, we have talked about that, and I'm new in this position as well. I'm relatively new. Over just about a year ago, I started, and two, I think we have to remember the increase in these cases it's just really in the last several years become such a huge thing. I mean, I think that we're having to increase. I think part of the thing is people just don't realize here in Porter County what a huge problem we're dealing with. People aren't, they're not awake to, for whatever reason. I mean, and it helps to do stuff like this. It helps to have the sheriff have his video and that sort of thing. But I think we too we're to the point now where we're realizing that this is a thing because we have this many more CASAs, this many more kids. It's relatively recent, though. It's not like it's been the past couple years. So, I have talked with other directors and other programs across the state, and we've got a lot of ideas. What I hear a lot is that this particular area is pretty tapped out, is what I hear a lot. And so there are a lot of good people donating and doing a lot of good things for other people. And so I think we want to be effective. So we're just looking for the best way to do that. And we have some ideas.
She's Jewish, so she's very good at this.
Great.
I have two friends I call the Jewish mothers. I've never had. Kelly's one of them, and the other one, ironically, is a U.S. Marshal, and he's talking about guilt trips. I always get guilt trips, but so we'll come back to that. But let's get on with the other questions we had planned. So, how has CASA, since it's had this long history of being brought in to Porter County and establishing, how has it changed over the years from its beginnings to now?
Well, Sissy's been with the program for years. So, Sissy, what would you say about that? We were talking about that the other
Well,
day.
20 years ago, basically a lot of the cases were just dirty houses, which that was an easy fix. Clean it up and you're good to go. Well, now, unfortunately, about 80% of our cases, or at least 80%, involve drug use, and the drug of choice, as everyone knows, in Porter County, is heroin use. So that puts a whole new twist onto it because it's not easy to cure a heroin addict.
Right.
And the other, things that go along with that, such as they have used all their money on drugs, so who knows if even some of these people, they might be living in their cars. So we were better off with a dirty house. At least you had a house. So also, it seems to be too, as I know Sarah had stated, there's more and more things involved in these cases. Instead of just having lack of resources in a dirty house, you now have the drug use. You have you might have domestic violence thrown in with that, and mental illness. So that's pretty much what we're dealing with.
But along with with that, as a program, I think we're realizing, with the complexity of cases and that sort of thing, the need to provide support and encouragement and appreciation for the volunteers because they do such a great job, and that's one of the ways we're trying to change things too, trying to make continuing education and continuing formation for the CASAs a priority. And just in any way that we can think, and this is again what the advisory group helps me with, it's a finger on what the CASAs themselves need. So I think that's a new thing for us in terms of what's changed. I think we're trying to be more in tune with what the needs of the CASAs are. You mentioned earlier, just the need to process, either the direction of a case or also what's happening emotionally with the CASA themselves. And so I think we're doing a good job of that.
Plus, what makes it so difficult is, 5 years ago the CASA program served 150 people. Now, in 2017, we serve 400 children. That's
right.
I was just about to ask for those numbers. That's
big increase.
And so, has your staffing increased proportionately, or what does it look like compared to? So you started out with X number, and your clientele is at this number.
Right.
What's the proportion
We
there?
about not quite doubled last year.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, when I started in 2011 as a volunteer, we did not have a staff, we did not have the position that we currently have, which is called a staff advocate, and I hate that name. It's misrepresentative a little bit. It's basically because of the increase in children, we have had there's actually a waiting list for kids to receive representation. But we have an understanding with the court that every child will receive a first assessment, and every child will be seen, and every child will be represented at least the dispositional hearing. We represent every child at every hearing, and we do that because the position was created, and I had this role prior to being a director as that staff advocate. So it's a person on staff who takes care of the waiting list and monitors that waiting list until such time as a CASA volunteer becomes available. And it's not ideal, but it's and we really chipped away at that waiting list because we have recruited more volunteers. We'd like to have no waiting list and have that staff advocate do more mentorship and supervision, which is exactly what will happen once we get rid of the waiting list. But that's one of the ways that staff has changed over the course of the years.
And I'd just like to say our recruitment efforts have really, it seems, have really gone up in the last year. Like January of last year, I think we had 35 volunteers. And then now we're up to 60. So we've really tried
So
to
you
get our
are
name out.
keeping
Yeah.
up somewhat,
Right.
but proportionately it's going to be a
Needs to be more.
challenge.
Yes.
Right.
Because
Yeah, so-
unfortunately, for every, one case that's dismissed, we get 2 more.
Right.
So
And you
that's what
don't
we're-
know. You're
Right.
dealing
Yeah,
with an
what
issue
was
you don't know
unpredictable.
because it's a social issue. You don't know what is coming down the road.
Exactly.
And you're not like a business that, well, okay, we've got these projections. You don't know what your projections are. That same could be said for any of the social illnesses in this community. It's just you don't know how
Although
to
I
respond
will
to it.
say, with Emily on board here, we have taken advantage. We have a database that's called Optima that we use, and we've really started to look at numbers more, and so that we can do a little bit better job of, with the tools on the island, making predictions about trends and about percentages of increase that we could anticipate based on the way the last 5 years have gone. So,
And what are your involvements? And in fact, I had his name at the tip of my tongue, and I forgot. There's some parenting classes out there that's being offered by a minister that he has this organization. It's a social organization that
oh,
gets
you're not
involved
talking
in
about
community.
Garner Tullis, are you?
Yes, I
Yeah.
am. Exactly. Thank you,
Good old
Garner,
Garner.
if you're out there. Sorry. Sorry. I'm sure that people, who's that guy who has a radio show on WLP? And I
Greater
have no
Good,
idea. Yeah,
right?
the greater good.
Greater Good.
And so that is good. I mean, are you involved with that and helping him out with that?
Garner
or-
and I have, we have scheduled meetings like 4 times, and each time one or the other of us have had to cancel. But I know Garner from, just because our kids were in school together, and I
Yeah,
know his
great guy.
organization does great things, and I look forward to hearing it, and we are going to get together, and I'm hoping that he can mentor us in certain ways. Yeah.
He's on one of my checklists that people have on the radio.
Great,
And,
yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the people at Lenny Corso, him, and who's the other? Anyway, I won't get into it because people get
You'll have
upset
to ask
when I
him for
forget
his
to-
barbecue.
Oh
He's a big-
yeah.
he's a big-
Oh, believe me, I'm a Facebook friend of his.
Yeah.
It's constantly it's
Food.
smokers.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
barbecue. It's yeah.
Yeah.
And him and I used to do CrossFit together. That's how I
Oh,
I
yes.
know him from
Right.
being competition together, being at that same age group.
Yeah.
Although he's kept up with a lot better than I have. So there is, because that is always a expanding problem like this. The problem begins with parenting. You know,
Yeah.
and I often tell people it's easy to become a parent. It's another thing to be a parent.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And you know, it's almost like, gosh, this seems so
Right.
wrong to say, but gosh, you know, I almost feel like sometimes we should offer parenting classes before, before the delivery, and because it's just crazy. We see things out there. It's just. And there were issues when I was a kid, but still, I'm looking at society today, like the family out in California. Oh my gosh, chaining kids to
Right.
beds.
Right.
And I know now video games, internet, social media is become a babysitter, and for all the wrong reasons. And we're seeing the social outcry from that, the effects of it. We're seeing increase in drug problem. We're seeing abuse. Mental health has become an issue. And I will say mental health and social media, there's a direct correlation there that we that no one the people have stepped forward, but I think there needs to be more research in that. But then we end up with outbreak that we need services like yours. And one of my concerns is, gosh, are we keeping this up? Are we keeping ahead of the
Right. With the
game?
parenting, that Garner, I think he identified a need in our community, and he basically stepped up and filled that gap. So I think that's great. And, I know the magistrate, we end up recommending parenting services often
Right.
for kids.
Well,
Yeah.
he's involved at Chefs of the Round Table.
Yeah.
Gardner, if you're listening out there, I have my vote is for your next year's benefit.
Fundraising for CASA.
Yeah, raise for CASA. Yeah, barbecue for CASA.
That's right. There
So,
you go.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's talk about if someone's sitting out there, maybe listening to this radio program, and is thinking, "Man, I would really love to get involved." What is the next step? What do you tell them to do?
Sissy?
The next step would be they can either fill out our application on the Family and Youth Service Bureau website, or they probably what they would really want to do is give me a call, and then I can set up an interview and then direct them onto how to fill out the application.
464-9585.
Yes, 464-9585.
Slow.
Okay.
Because there are people like me that I wouldn't be able to write that down. Okay, so just get right, if you can, just slowly tell them the number, and it will be
The
good.
number is 464-9585, and then just ask to speak to somebody from CASA.
And if you're not good at if you're driving, you can't write down that number, you can find us on Facebook at Porter County CASA. We probably need to change that to CASA at Porter County, but it is Porter County CASA. And then we also, the website is Family and Youth Services Bureau. That's their website, and it's fysb.org/CASA program.
And then that process, of course, then they have the background check.
Correct. They come in for an interview, and
Then once they pass all the interview and background check, and then how long does it take for a CASA to be trained, would you say?
It's about 5 weeks. And normally what we do is we will have training, because a lot of people are still working full time. You know, we have some people that have retired, but so we offer evening classes, and they will normally be about 2.5 hours long for 5 weeks, and it'll be
but two times a week only, not
yes,
not 5
yes.
nights a week.
The only time they may be more often is if I do a day class, which
Right.
so far I've only done 2 of those. So because the trend is definitely for everybody wanting to have a night class, and then included in that, it's about 30 hours of training. And they also would need to do a court observation, which would either be in the morning or afternoon, and that's approximately about 3 hours.
And most of our CASA volunteers work full time, so they're doing the training. You know, typically 2 nights a week for that for 5 weeks. As Sissy said, it's about 30 hours with courtroom observation, But then, you know, once you're doing the job of CASA, you're scheduling your appointments and your interviews and your meetings on your own time according to what works for your schedule. So there's flexibility there. Once you're past the training stage, you're doing what you can, and you know, as your job would allow. Because, like I say, most people are working, and you get taught everything. You know, a lot of times people, you know, this is a lot of stuff we've thrown out here, but. We really take you from the ground floor, and we teach you about the social services. We teach you about the courtroom. We teach you about what to look for in kids, and how to do the interviews, and get to know parents. And we take you through everything.
And training is ongoing.
Yes.
It's almost impossible because you're talking about different life situations.
It's very fluid.
So
what you would experience.
you can't, it's almost impossible to be totally prepared for your case, because things are going to pop up that sometimes we haven't seen before, a different circumstance. So the training is definitely ongoing.
You brought up a point which caused me to think, which is unusual thinking for me. Right? You talked about availability for courts, their availability. I began thinking, you know, I mean, courts don't, they don't schedule their time around people's schedules.
Right.
They set a time, and you better be there.
Yes.
So what does your typical CASA look like? What is it? Mostly retired people? People that work part-time?
It's everything.
Everything.
Yeah, we have people that, like, you know, Sissy said, we have some law students. We have moms. We have people that are working on as financial analysts, and like I said, most of them have full-time jobs. In terms of their showing up for court, what we tell them is that, you know, we don't want somebody to not become a CASA if in every other regard they are really wanting to do that and would be potentially good at that. If they thought that, you know, once or twice they would have to miss a courtroom appearance, they should be able to. Court happens on Tuesdays. Sometimes because if it's full, it happens on Mondays and Tuesdays. But typically on a Tuesday, and then you would get either an afternoon or a morning time slot. What we have done, and most people, we tell them that as they're interviewing, you know, that you would have to be available for court. But if you can't be, and this happens, where your supervisor will sit for you, and your supervisor knows your case, and your supervisor, you know, knows what's going on, and they can sit for you if need be. Yeah, so
So you have subs built into either supervisor or
sure,
someone
we
if
can
you can't make a
cover for
court date.
people who are not able to.
Plus, review hearings are only held every 3 months, so
That's
it's
right.
not as if you're going to court every 2 or 3 weeks.
All right.
Right, we should say
So
something
it's not-
actually about how that works. You receive your training when you get your first case. You're doing the bulk of the work at the beginning of a case where you're interviewing people in preparation for what's called the dispositional hearing, and that's the hearing at which you're expected to write a report with the help of your supervisor, of course, and that thereafter it's more of a monitoring situation. So, so we encourage people to see their children at least once a month, but it's not like they're in court every Tuesday. As Sissy said, it's the court hearings happen every 3 months, 3 to 6 months. So.
All right, so it's not a weekly need.
No,
So
it's
a
not.
schedule out there, so they could use vacation time, sick days, or what have you to get
Yes.
get to that point. Okay.
And
all
we
right,
have
so-
some employers. We just started this year sending thank you notes to the employers of our CASA volunteers because many, many places around here are happy to have their employees do this kind of work, and they're supportive, and they allow, not all of them, but many of them do just say, yes, take off for court and allow that to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of companies are very supportive of this community
Mm-hmm.
and everything goes on. And I think that more so as they see things happen in the community, they step forward. And
Right.
it's a very big part of being involved and making sure that employees get the time off. One thing I want to touch upon as we go on, and we're almost to the point where we close up the show, but one of the things that we brought up a little bit earlier is, this is pretty tough stuff. It is pretty tough. You're exposed to a lot, and we talked about the mental demands that's put on a person that's involved. And again, I guess now that you're telling me it's like every 3 weeks or so, it's better, but still they have to get involved with these people. And so, are you seeing any people that have to say, "I need to break away," or I've got to get away from this? Do you have I know you sit around and talk to it, but do you have any resources where someone really needs to get a checkup, so to speak, and get a mental checkup?
We have not encountered that, no. And
No.
and in fact, I want to emphasize that one of our CASA volunteers just said, she was saying that people often ask her, "Gosh, how can you do that? How can you do that?" It would be, and she said that she finds just the opposite of being burned out. That she's actually felt in awe of like family members and friends who step up to take care of a child's needs, and she's in awe of the magistrate's devotion to these cases and the DCF staff and the volunteers. So she's encouraged. And I would say for the most part, also we were talking about before we came here about just the kids' resiliency and what it's like to see a child. It's all about the child, and that's the great thing about this program too, is you are able to focus. It's not political. You're not making judgments. You are just getting to know a beautiful child or a bunch of beautiful children. And that is, you learn as much and you take away and are inspired. And I would say most of our CASAs, it's more empowering in a way, and they're encouraged. People do go on leave, but it's not usually because I just can't take this anymore. It's because I have to take care of my mother, or
Right.
I'm moving, or that's more, I would say, what we see than people just being burnt out.
And well, it falls right into one of our last questions is how many hours does a CASA devote on an average? And what is the overall time commitment?
On average, if you have one case, which all new CASAs only have one case,
Right.
it's actually only about 10 to 12 hours a month on average. And just as Sarah had said, the beginning of the case is when you do the most amount of work, because you're introducing yourself to all the parties involved and doing the research and trying to figure out exactly what is going on, talking to the case manager. So that does require the most amount of work, is at the very beginning.
And I just would add or emphasize, leaving on this note, that it really is a privilege to do this job, and I think our CASAs would say that too. It's inspiring and it's a privilege more so than a burden.
And before we close out, Sarah, I don't know if you want to do this or someone else. Do you want to review again how someone gets in contact with CASA to become a volunteer or to seek assistance?
Right. Please give us a call at the Family and Youth Services Bureau office. That number is, of course, 219 area code 464-9585. If you're looking for that number because you can't remember it, just go to Facebook and look up Porter County CASA. Our number and location is on that page, as well as on the Family Youth Services Bureau website. If you / CASA program, you'll find us there too.
All right, great. Is there anything else you want to share with the listeners? Yes, go ahead.
I want to add that we actually do 4 trainings a year, and that the next one is starting February 7th.
Right. So call us for an interview before that time. We would love to meet you and talk with you.
And the one after that will be probably starting in March.
Okay.
Wait, the training in March or the training after February's training? We would wait a couple months and
We'll
then have
interview
every
in March.
quarterly.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
interviewing
probably-
in March,
well,
right?
So probably
May
well,
would be
probably
like May, August, and November.
March and April interview, and then May.
Yeah.
And this is being broadcast on our YouTube channel, so you're more than welcome to share that
Great.
On your Facebook. We'd appreciate if you do, actually.
We will do that.
And then, that way people can listen to it and get all this information again, which I think this is a much under exposed service in the county. And, it's just, more people that know about it, more people that get in touch with you, the volunteer. At best, I would encourage anyone out there. Do you have any relationship with United Way? I know they've been on the show, and there's a lot of volunteers there that are
Right.
looking for-
We you can. I think you can also go on United Way's website, and we have a presence there. And in fact, we're going to meet with somebody from United Way next week. I know, and I think we had an internship from United Way once before when I was here. But certainly, they're looking to help place people that are potential volunteers. Yeah.
Well, that's the interesting thing. As I'm sitting here thinking and the things that we've had panel discussions on, this is one I think that, oh my goodness, I think that really needs to be talked about, from, the advocate standpoint to the people that, it probably wouldn't be unheard of to have some children have been helped out and just talk about, their experiences.
What we run into a lot, and it's part of it, is the HIPAA thing.
Yeah,
we
you're
need to spread our message and give stories because people, we have some really, truly great stories, but we are always sensitive to the confidentiality issue. Right. So.
And a lot of, like, we've just had one on, sexual aggression and abuse and rape. And we used first names. And one of the people, I think that they actually didn't use their real first name. And we even we went over to a place that the sheriff provided for us to meet in. So, but I would love to have you back on to discuss this further, because I really do feel this is one of the areas that we need to, as a county, concentrate on to make sure that the children are being looked after and making sure there's more resources available for CASAs and help them out.
We're so grateful. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here.
Oh, and thank you for being here, and we'd love to have you back on the show again.
Thank you.
I want to spend some time with Megan just to talk about what's coming up in the future. Again, Megan's going to be taking some time off, much needed time.
Yes, yeah.
Being the coordinator for the Recovery Connection in Porter County. Next week, we'll be having our show again, the Bill Moran show we'll have, but we will probably, you're not going to be here, Megan?
So I will. Following today's show, you'll hear a repeat from last week. It was our recorded show with Sharon Mortensen. Next week, I will be here, and we'll be live again, and I believe that Todd Willis, who is the Director of Prevention and Education at Porter Stark, will be here. I think we might talk about some myths of substance abuse and recovery and things like that, but then the next week I will not be here with you. So
okay,
yes.
Right. And then we have some other guests lined up for that I'm going to be talking about, and we'll confirm for Recovery Radio. It's a neat idea. I'm really excited about Recovery Radio, because I think it's going to blossom into more things than we ever, and actually make it entertaining for people out there. One of the things that I talked to you about before, there's a genre of music out there. I mean, it is typical music, but they've created their own genre. And so this show may turn into a music show.
Hey,
I have
that
guys
would be great.
spin some tunes, and I've got some idea of people we can invite as well.
Yeah,
so
that'd be awesome.
it's going to be fun, but also engaging, because it's a topic we need to keep talking about.
Definitely.
So next week we'll be together again, and
We'll be here.
Megan's show will be live, and so will we. And just keep in tune on our Facebook page to find out who's going to be on and what times. And with that, we do need to close the show. And I just want to urge you, if you would like to support WVLP, we're all volunteers. We all are here just to help out the community and get the message out. We have great music shows. If you feel like you want to contribute, please go to wvlp.org/support, and there you'll be given an opportunity to donate specific amounts or schedule monthly. So please consider doing that. Visit our website, look at the schedules. You'll find we rival a lot of public radio stations, and we are all here on a voluntary basis. So we appreciate if you do that. And with that, we would like to wish you all a very, very safe and enjoyable week and weekend. The rebroadcast of this, look for on Saturday, and it's going to be an hour offset. They've had to make a change. So the Bill Moran Show will be 5 to 6 rebroadcast, and then, of course, the Recovery Radio will be 6 to 7. I believe I got that right. But just check on our Facebook page, and we'll have the updated information. And with that, we wish you a safe week.
You have been listening to The Bill Moran Show on WVLP LP 103.1 FM and streaming live at WVLP.org or on your TuneIn app. Broadcast live from the historic 1 Center Street building in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana. The Bill Moran Show is underwritten by Recovery Works of Maryville, Indiana. If you or a loved one are struggling with a drug or alcohol problem, please call us at 866-535-4673. This show will be rebroadcast on Saturday at 4 o'clock p.m. on WVLP. The Bill Moran Show podcast is available on iTunes and YouTube. Have a wonderful week. Bye for now.